Good morning and welcome to the Her Hoop Stats podcast. Today is Monday, September 29th. I am Brittany Carper, joined this morning by Richard Cohen, and I don't think we have a lot to talk about. What do you think, Richard?
Nope, quiet weekend.
Yeah,
I'm sure
quiet
we'll come up
weekend.
with something, but we might have to, search around for a while.
Yeah, I think we will dive right in with what really captured probably most of the women's sports world for sure on Friday night in the Game 3 matchup. The Lynx visiting the Mercury, very close, tightly fought game, coming down to the wire, and what we have probably all seen several times now, a questionable call, foul, whatever you want to say, that did not go in the favor of the Lynx. And I can get your take on the foul, but what happened afterwards was Cheryl Reeve. I think really just a culmination of frustration, really boiled over after officials, was seen obviously very upset at fans that were after her too, and then had quite the press conference as well. So Richard, outside of the game, we'll dig into that. Just your general thoughts, because I think this has been a season long theme in the league with coaches and just the frustration in officiating. And it really boiled to a head Friday night in Phoenix. And so let's just dig in right there and kind of what are your thoughts and how the league goes forward?
Yeah, I mean, officiating's been a hot topic for a long time in this league partly because the league has always been treated as sort of a second class citizen by the NBA in terms of officiating, and that if the refs get too good, then they move up in terms of what the NBA considers to be the progression your target is to make it to the NBA if you're good enough. So anyone considered to be good enough gets poached, and that leaves the W with what's left. And these refs do their best, and I think what gets overlooked a lot in this discussion is that it's not their fault. In a lot of cases, they're doing what they're told to do. I mean, this is you see with refs like Mai Forsberg who officiate in the WNBA and in FIBA games when they go to international competitions, that the instructions are different. So it also comes down to what the instructions are from the top to the officials, what they're being told to call, what it says in the rule book, and then what the guidance is from their bosses. So it has to come from there if we want sort of real main proper change from sort of on a grand scale across all of the league and across all of the games, because you're not going to get it just by trying to hire a few different refs or paying a little more in salary so that you get a couple of the better ones who might go on holiday in the summer instead of bothering to work in the WNBA. That's not going to change that much.
Yeah, I think, and this is really a trickle down effect, in my opinion, because I obviously watch a lot of women's college basketball as well. Yesterday, Steph White and Becky Hammon both came out and supported Cheryl Reeve. And I think what frustrates many is the game has grown. They don't feel like the officiating has grown with it. And like you said, the investment isn't there. But I think for coaches and fans in particular, the lack of transparency and accountability is frustrating. And
Yeah.
there's never, for the women's game, there aren't reports really. We aren't seeing what calls, what, percentage the officials are getting right. Whereas on the NBA side, you do get those metrics and you are able to see a lot of that. I don't know if you saw that article. I can't remember who posted it, but it was out on the internet, and just the journalist had to look on LinkedIn for the bio of a couple of the officials. And so to not have a database where you can actually go in and see what games these officials have worked, what their success rate in calls, I think is just very frustrating. And when there isn't that accountability factor, you see it boil over. And I think, yes, certainly that play, Cheryl Reeve was frustrated, but to me, it was just a season long where many coaches have voiced their frustration in what officiating has been this year.
Yeah, it was definitely a build-up. It wasn't just that one play, which I think, I mean, different people can argue it different ways, but I would say under the actual rules, as the referee's account tried to sort of state on Twitter, I think that's a clean steal by Alyssa Thomas. It's unfortunate that it then ends in serious contact to Collier after she takes the ball away. But yeah, I think under the current rules and current officiating, that's a clean play. But it's about what was happening all the way through the game, and about Collier barely shooting a free throw in the entire contest. And Reeve got upset about all of that before then that one play when they they just about lost the game at that point as well. So I'm sure that was part of Cheryl's frustration in the moment as well, and she wanted to rip Isaac Barnett's head off, somewhat understandably. And yeah, then we get on to whether she should have been suspended or not, and the debates that came over that. I think ultimately that wasn't that much of a surprise because we had both what she was doing on the court when she got so upset, and then we had her yelling at some of the fans on the way off the court as well, which got caught on video. And then we had the press conference as well, where she made the statements that they could only broadcast when they bleeped out certain moments of it. So, yeah, I think with all of that piling up on top of each other, I don't think the suspension was a big surprise. I think the league probably felt that any one of those, it might have just been a fine. But once you had all three, they probably felt they had to come in with a suspension.
Yeah, I feel like it was kind of a three strikes and you're out kind of situation there. So unfortunate for the Lynx. The game three was a really good game. The big three for the Mercury again showed up. They were all in 20 points. I think AT had 21, Sabali 23, and Copper had 21 for them. And that forced a game four in which the Mercury really came out of the gate slow against, without Cheryl Reeve for the Lynx. The Lynx came out hot. And, I thought going into that fourth quarter, if they could maybe string a couple baskets together, because I thought the Mercury would apply the pressure. But, just what do you think really was kind of the downfall? What do you think it was more the Lynx not doing what they could in the fourth quarter, or just the Mercury kind of imposing their will?
Yeah, I mean the fourth quarters ended up being the difference across game two, three, and four. I think it was 38 points total across those three games in the fourth quarter that Phoenix were on top, or 44 if you include the overtime from game two. So that was, yeah, Minnesota couldn't close any of the games out, and when the game slowed down and really ground to a halt, so their transition game wasn't getting them anything, they looked like they kind of ran out of ideas in the half court. That we saw a couple of really ugly heaves from McBride after she was hot earlier, because that was all they ended up being able to create in half court sets. And Phoenix have certainly, at least against Minnesota, we'll see whether it holds up in the next series, but in against Minnesota, they kind of found that lineup with Bonner and West and Whitcomb playing with their big three. That's really worked for them as sort of a closeout lineup for the fourth quarter. They have other players they can go to if they need McCarney, if they need Westbeld or Mack. But that group, that five, has really worked for them with all the length they've got. They can switch a lot, but they can keep you out of the paint with the length of the arms and the strength they've got in those defense. And they survive on the boards despite none of those players being, none of them's a center. You've got basically Alyssa Thomas playing the five and Dewana Bonner at the four, which, both of those players would rather be playing a little bit higher up the lineup. But yeah, they can survive on the glass, and that group got them over the line against Minnesota.
Yeah, the defensive pressure I thought they applied in the fourth quarter yesterday really changed the game. The Lynx looked all out of sorts. I would have liked to see, and again, a credit to the Mercury defense, but just a little bit more of a downhill penetration from the Lynx, or using Jessica Shepard at the blocks a little bit more. I think they had two shot clock violations, like you said, a couple heave threes where they were, just kind of throwing up prayers at the end of a shot clock. And it made it really challenging for them on that offensive side. And then credit to the Mercury and Dewana Bonner, though. She had 11 points in the fourth quarter. She hit three really big threes. Alyssa Thomas kind of just did what she'd done all series, got herself into the paint, made baskets, found the extra pass. The ball movement from the Mercury was really, really good in the fourth quarter, but that's because they got the ball in the paint. And that success is just so easy to see once you're able to break down a defense and you have someone like Alyssa Thomas that can distribute the basketball the way she does when she gets in the paint. Do you think there was anything the Lynx could have tried to do a little differently in the fourth quarter defensively, or was it just the Mercury were kind of clicking on all cylinders?
Well, that one set that we have seen so many times from Phoenix in the playoffs, where the point guard comes in and sets that sort of middle screen on the back
Hmm.
of the big that's trying to guard Alyssa Thomas, has worked over and over and over again. Minnesota never really found an answer for it. They started out in game one with um, Fee playing up high, really tight on Thomas, and then Thomas scored like 15, 16 points in the first half alone. They dropped off for most of the rest of the series and played her deep, like lots of teams have done. Jonquel Jones defender like that, Aaliyah Boston defender like that, just sagging deep into the paint. And then that middle screen creates problems because you either get caught by it while Thomas goes by you, or you try and sag underneath it, which is what Minnesota did a lot. But sometimes you can't get around it because you can't see where the hell what the screener is. So yeah, I don't think Sammy Whitcomb and Monica Akamakani have set as many screens probably in their entire lives as they have in the last 2 weeks. But it's worked over and over again, and Minnesota never really found an answer, whether it was Collier or then Smith or Cleandakova trying to defend her on that same play.
Yeah, I think that has been so effective for them. And when you have both Sammy Whitcomb and Akoa Makani that can shoot the three, get downhill after that, and then be able to make either a pass or a shot from Alyssa Thomas, I don't know the answer. She is such a tough matchup. You can't switch because she can take advantage of a smaller guard. And then, like you said, once the post recovers, it's either they're a half step late and she can get by them with, she has her shoulder by them, or then she makes, a pass out to the wing or back to that point guard that then they take advantage of. And then my last thing kind of on that series, two things really. The Mercury has the big three. They have a very good team. Do you consider them an underdog because of what they have and their seed, or do you kind of think this is where they should be given what their roster is constructed of?
I mean, I certainly considered them the underdog going into this series when Minnesota were in one piece and healthy because of how good Minnesota had been this season. But Phoenix's record isn't necessarily a reflection of exactly what they were because they were missing so many pieces at so many different times all season. What they've managed to do is get everyone healthy at the right time. But unlike sort of what New York were trying to do, where they got healthy at the last second, Phoenix got healthy early enough that they managed to build some chemistry with this group. That this collection of players know what they're doing with each other, and they got a lot of veterans who sort of understand how to play as a unit. And I mean, obviously they did great scouting as well before this season, which is how you've ended up with McCarney. You got a rookie point guard starting in the finals. I mean, not a traditional point guard because Alyssa Thomas runs the point half the time, at least. But still, you've got a rookie starting. You got Westbell playing important minutes off the bench. This is a group that's been very impressive. But yeah, I would imagine they'd be underdogs to Vegas in a finals, but favorites over Indiana if we get that far. But yeah, this is a team that deserves to be where they are. They've earned it, even if they obviously got some luck from the Collier injury.
Yeah, I think they are a team, like you said, were able to get healthy a little later in the season and really build that chemistry, which we've seen through two series now. They just seem very connected. They have a lot of matchup nightmares for a lot of teams just because they have the size. Satu Sabali, she can just really take advantage of a lot of different players when she's really feeling it offensively. And through, besides game one, she was exceptional for them. And then with Alyssa Thomas, obviously, like we've touched on, just really a matchup nightmare as well because she can hurt you in so many different ways. The second part of that is, do you consider the Lynx season a disappointment? How do you kind of view how they finished, with such an outstanding regular season, really never challenged for that number one seed throughout? How do you kind of, what do you think of the Lynx now that their season has ended?
I mean, I think they'll certainly consider it a disappointment because they were meant to win a title. They were the best team over the course of the season, and they're not going to come away with even an appearance in the finals. Never mind hanging a banner. Um, I was talking about this on Blue Sky yesterday. That I grew up in a system where, with soccer as our major sport, and the best team wins the league title because we play a season, and the team that finishes top of the league table gets the trophy, and that's it. Whereas this is where American sports ends up feeling a little bit unfair because Minnesota, by any empirical measurement, are the best team this season over the course of the year, and they won't win it, and they won't get rings or a banner in the ceiling. But that's how it works. That's how the system works in the US, and that's how it plays out. It's going to be Phoenix, Vegas, or Indiana that end up being listed in the record books. So yeah, I think Minnesota will consider it a disappointment, and basically their entire roster are free agents. So that's the other part of this. They don't know how much of this group are going to be back, even though clearly a lot of them enjoy their time in Minnesota. They're also mostly past the summit point of their career. They're not far past their prime, but apart from Collier, most of them are it over 30 at this point. So you have to start recycling the roster and starting to look into who might be replacements, who might be the next generation for this team. This unit might never play together again, basically.
Yeah, and I think that was probably felt some through Kayla McBride's press conference, how upset
Mm.
she was and just how much she spoke how highly of, she enjoyed playing with that roster and how connected, and I think it was very obvious for them that a championship was the goal, and to fall short of that is hard pill to swallow. But I think, like you said, American sports are weird that way. I say this often about the college game because to me, a regular season is a more a direct reflection of the type of team you are, and you are, not really judged on that in the end. You are judged on how your postseason appearances wind up. So I know the Lynx will have a regular season to remember, but falling short certainly feels like a disappointment for them. In the other game four matchup, we were treated to we will get a game five in the closest of the games that we had between the Fever and Aces took place yesterday. Their Friday night matchup, the Aces, handily won on the road, in Indiana. And yesterday was just a different story. What did you think were the big adjustments that the Fever made that they were able to force a game five?
I think the main thing we saw was Aaliyah Boston being aggressive and throughout the game, and also not just her approach, but the team forcing her to stay aggressive as well with the sets that Steph White ran in the second half, basically clearing out a side and saying, "We are going to give you the ball in the low post, and you're going to go and try and score." And there's not really a second option on this play unless they send like three defenders at you, in which case, okay, pass. But until they do that, go score. That we have watched too many games over her entire pro career, which is what 3 years now, that Aaliyah Boston disappears offensively. And even if we see in the first quarter an aggressive Aaliyah Boston, too many games where then it fades over the course of the game as well. But last night it held up. She kept it going throughout the whole game, and that made the difference. This is the first time she's ever had 20, 10, and 5, 20 points, 10 rebounds, 5
Mhm.
assists in a playoff game. And that made a huge difference to what Indiana had to offer offensively because they had two rocks. They had Mitchell and they had Boston, and that makes a massive difference to what you can present to try and keep up with Vegas and their offense.
Yeah, I completely agree. I thought she was the difference maker. She was only averaging a little over 9 points a game in the series up until yesterday. And her presence on the low block, just by whether finishing, being demanding of the basketball, or getting to the free throw line, in which I'm sure you saw as well, Asia Wilson made the joke about in the press conference. But she did attempt 11 free throws in the third quarter alone. And some you can say maybe that was a favorable whistle, but I also thought, like you said, she was just aggressive and they were calling plays for her. She was demanding of the basketball. And when you know you're going to have an aggressive Kelsey Mitchell every game, and then you know now maybe that in game 5 you'll have an aggressive Aaliyah Boston on the block, that to me is, possibly a series changer for the Fever, because you now have a reliable second option in Aaliyah Boston. And really, the Aces didn't have a lot of answers for her on the low block. I thought she really went toe to toe with Asia Wilson. I know Asia finished, I believe, with 31, but Boston was the one who really down the stretch kind of made her presence in that third and fourth quarter of asking for the basketball. And then obviously Odyssey Sims had a big game for the Fever as well. So do you think into game 5, what are the big things that the Aces need to correct, whether on the offensive or defensive end, that can propel them to the WNBA finals?
I think one sort of thing that we saw when they were trying to set Boston up on the low block were a lot of post for post screens where Howard or the other post that was on the floor with Boston would set the screen on Wilson so that she often got to post up on Vegas's other big rather than on Wilson. So you wonder whether Vegas might try to avoid switching that as much as they did so that it remains Wilson trying to guard Boston. Obviously, you want to avoid foul trouble on Wilson, but she's usually pretty good at staying out of that, even if she does have to defend straight up on post ups. So you might see more of that. They may also just back themselves to play slightly better, hit a few more shots, because Vegas are still going to go into this as favorites for Game 5, and whether Boston can do this again will be a question because we've not seen too many games like we saw from her in Game 4. So is that a sign of what she's going to be for the rest of the playoffs, if it's one game or whether it's another 8? But yeah, whether she'll be able to do that again remains a question. And yeah, as we've seen for this whole series, then to a certain extent, it comes down to whether Wilson makes more shots than Kelsey Mitchell does, because that's been a game changer. Although Wilson did score well in Game 4 and Indiana won anyway because she didn't get enough help. But ultimately, that's been a big piece. Is they're doing everything they can on Kelsey Mitchell, but sometimes she's going to shoot 4 of 20, and sometimes she's going to shoot 14 of 20, almost regardless of how good the defense is. So yeah, I I give Indiana at the bare minimum a puncher's chance to win a Game 5. They've shown Vegas are beatable, and yeah, Vegas are favorites, but definitely not certainties to win Game 5.
Yeah, I thought yesterday too, Indiana was just all over defensively, making it difficult. I think the Aces ended up with 15 turnovers, which the Fever were able to capitalize on. They just seemed to really swarm to the basketball, make life difficult in the lane. And then, like you said, they're gonna, live. I think somewhat you live with what Asia Wilson does, and then you try to take away and make it very difficult for the guards in Jackie Young, Chelsea Gray, and particularly Jewel Lloyd. I think she has to have more of a presence in game 5 for them. She's been very quiet, but really needs to assert herself a little bit more on the offensive end. For me anyway, for the Aces to kind of figure out offensively a little bit of a pressure release if Asia is getting so much attention and the other guards are not being able to get downhill making their shots. Do you think that is a possibility of her to be a little bit more aggressive as well?
I mean, it would be nice to see, but I feel like we've been waiting for Jewel Lloyd to step up most of the season, and there was a little stretch where we thought we were seeing it when Vegas ran off that winning streak to end the season, but mostly even when she has good games, it's by standing in the corner and shooting catch and shoot threes. She's, Rachel Banham could be doing that, although probably not playing the same kind of defense that Lloyd is. But you don't need a supermax contract and the track record that Jewel Lloyd has to be standing in the corner shooting threes when they get kicked out to you by Asia Wilson. So yeah, it would be nice, but I wouldn't be betting my house on Jewel Lloyd producing that. To go back to something else you mentioned there, yeah, Jackie Young is having an incredible series, considering I think Lexi Hull is also having an incredible series trying to chase her around and playing great defense, and Young scoring anyway and scoring efficiently anyway and distributing the ball as well. And yeah, Jackie Young has become one of the absolute elite players in the world in the last couple of years, and it's incredibly impressive what she's doing for this team.
Yeah, that matchup has been really fun to watch. I think Lexi Hull is chasing her off of every screen, making it really difficult. And Jackie Young has still figured out ways to score the basketball, dish to her teammates. And that to me will be a critical matchup in game 5, too, because in game 3, Lexi Hull was in foul trouble, ended up fouling out of the game. And so if you see an early whistle in game 5, I look for the Aces to really take advantage of that. And it will be interesting, again, back to the whistle. Yesterday, the Fever attempted 34 free throws, the Aces 11. I don't know that we'll see that kind of disparity in game 5, but how much of a factor do you think that will play in what we see from both of these teams?
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that we always end up talking about officiating after too many of these games, but yeah, it'll play its part because that's part of why Vegas are talking about the free throws in Game 4 is because you want it in the minds of the officials who are going to be working Game 5. You you want them thinking, oh well, they had so many last game. Do we want to even this up? Do we want to keep it even for this game? At the very least, you want sort of them thinking, oh well, we can't have Indiana having that many more free throws this time as well. It can't. So yeah, you bring it up in the press conference. You bring it up in any interview before the game, and it must. I mean, I've never been a referee. I've stayed away from that. It's never been remotely appealing to me. It takes a special kind of personality and a special kind of brain to want to be an official. But it has to be hard to avoid hearing all of that. You're in the WNBA environment. Even if you stay off Twitter and stay out of the press, you're going to hear it from the refs on the sideline while you're trying to work the game. So yeah, it has to be hard to keep all of that out of your mind when you're just trying to call a game and call what you see on the floor.
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of chess being played in those press conferences. Like you said, you want to bring it to the attention of the disparity at the foul line and keep that in the forefront going into game 5, because whether that was an aggression thing on Indiana's part or just the way the whistle went, the Aces surely want to avoid that kind of margin in game 5 if possible. And so, like you said, officiating is a hard job. No one is disagreeing with that, but certainly when you see numbers like that in several games over the course of a playoff series, or just even in general this league playoffs, there are going to be eyes, there is chatter about it. And so I think with the Lynx and Mercury game on that past Friday, it has all just been kind of, now everybody is watching and making mention of what we see out on the floor. But game 5 on Tuesday night, just who do you have?
Like I said, I Vegas are going to go in as the favorite. So if I had to bet money, maybe I'd be going Vegas. I'm very tempted to pick Indiana though, because I do think Vegas have looked beatable, have looked vulnerable, more vulnerable than maybe it felt like they were going to be against a 6 seed going into the playoffs. When Las Vegas pulled off that win streak to finish the season, when they looked strong. They often look strong against fairly poor teams, but yeah, it felt like even if Vegas make it through Game 5, Indiana have punctured, and Seattle did it a little as well in the previous round, but have punctured any sort of sense of invulnerability that Vegas had maybe built up in that winning streak. And I don't think I answered your question. I think I actively avoided that.
You did a nice job of that. I think it's worth noting. I mean, Indiana has won an elimination game on the road in the playoffs. They beat the Dream.
True.
They have the experience of that already, and they've played that way all season. You know, with the amount of injuries they've had their backs against the wall. I would not be surprised if they did walk out of the Aces, you know, with a win and they make it in the finals. If I had to pick, I think I would choose the Aces in a tight game. Though I don't think it will be a blowout. I think it will be much more like the game we saw yesterday, which was their closest margin that they've had. I think it will be a well fought battle, and I know certainly we're all looking forward to that and seeing, you know, the Phoenix, who the Mercury will match up with in the finals. So, any last thoughts on the weekend series, Richard?
One thing I wanted to I thought it was interesting that the league. I don't know when they make assignments for the officiating for the games, but the exact same three that ran the game that Reeve went crazy at then were assigned to the Las Vegas Indiana game 4, which seemed kind of pointed from the league to say we don't think these guys did anything that much wrong. But yeah, let's try to avoid making officiating the main thing we're talking about every game after every game in the playoffs.
I completely agree. It's been such an incredible season with on-court play that, you know, I hope we aren't all just focused on the whistle, because it takes away from what these women are doing, what they have done this season. And I know we will be in for a treat game 5 on, you know, Tuesday in Vegas. So with that, I hope you guys enjoy your Monday. Make sure you're checking us out on Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, X, wherever you get all your social media content. Richard is a great follow. He knows most everything about the game, especially all the little details that we do not know here. I'm Brittany Carper, and you guys enjoy your Monday.